Hello, everyone. It's Jackson. I'm back. I am sorry for the delay from my last video. Quite honestly, I've had a number of very busy days at work. Um, I work 4 10-hour days. This last week has turned into 6, 12, 13-hour days. So I've been finding it a challenge to find time to sit down here and put together a comprehensive, informative, entertaining video for y'all. So here I am. Today is the 28th of May at 3 in the afternoon, Pacific Standard Time up here in the Pacific Northwest. So there you have it. In the course of all that time spent at work, I've been seriously thinking about my past two videos, how they turned out. Oh, wow, I forgot to put my headphones in. I wonder if I'm sounding like an idiot. But we'll see. Nothing new there if I sound like an idiot. All right. Yeah, that sounds better. It's interesting how I've always wondered, as a part of the viewing audience of those um, on TV singing or talking or whatever, I've noticed that they put earpieces in or whatever, but they actually have speakers down in front of them. It all makes sense now. But anyways, that's here nor there. So I'm going to be referring to some notes I've made to make my videos more interesting. I've been really working hard on trying to how to do these videos and create an atmosphere as though I have an actual listening audience right now here with me as I speak, when in fact I don't. So that's been part of my challenge in the past, for which I totally apologize for, because I got to tell you, looking back at a couple of those videos, I feel bad for the viewers, and that you had to live through a lot of humming and hawing of mine, and I truly apologize. So putting a lot of thought into it, I want to make sure that I have notes in reference to what I want to speak about, and give myself some direction every time I'm doing this. So I'm until I get some live chats going with these videos and some direct connect to those who are interested in listening to anything I have to say. Um, I've really got to put a stage face on and act as though I've got someone truly listening to me as I'm speaking now. And I know eventually people will. So I'm kind of, that's what I'm keeping in mind, is that there is going to be a time in which people are watching this, and I'll be speaking to you at the time you're listening to it. And I need to keep that in mind. So here's my best effort at achieving that. All right. So you've probably noticed in at least my last video, through all the morbid stuff I have to tell you about, or the stories that are pretty grotesque in content that I'm going to be telling you about, um, I figured after that dance through morbid lane, I would end off each video with a joke, or some sort of entertaining thing to walk away with a smile and a giggle. Okay, so I decided that I'm going to start the videos with an additional creative thought of either providing some sort of trivial life story or event that I myself have tripped across, that I find myself fascinating in some way, and I thought it would run some value of sharing it with you. So um, one thing for today is, if you've ever been to the Pacific Northwest and visited or have lived sometime over the last 20 years, you may have visited the a bit of a staple, iconic donuts shop here in Portland called Voodoo Doughnuts. Now, through my current job, I service them three times a week. Last night, Sunday night, about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I stopped by to collect up their recycling, so I get to chit chat and hang out for a couple minutes with the night crew making the donuts for the next day's customers. So I think that's kind of neat in that they're just a couple of folks who do a job, but it's a job with passion to keep up a staple of Portland and maintain uh, uh, a donut that a lot of people enjoy and have found nostalgic to the backbone of Portland and Voodoo Doughnut mission of helping keeping Portland weird. So um, here's a story that I ran across just this morning about Voodoo Doughnut. As Voodoo Doughnut turned 20 years old, so I thought it would you may find it of interest to know a little bit about him. And if not, then fast forward through this video. I'm going to do the best I can just to read the short little story about him. So here we go. Once upon a time, in a mythical land named for its port, a donut shop opened in Old Town. That's, of course, referring to Portland and referring to the section of town called Old Town. In those days, young people smoked in bar basements and generally anywhere they wanted, while they overdrew their checking accounts, putting $1 cans of Pabst Blue Ribbon on their debit cards until 2 a.m. And Seven Nation Army and Kissing the Lipless played over the sound system. Sometimes they would cross the street and get a cough syrup donut from this new, I don't know how to pronounce this word, Anarch, Anarchic. I guess I should have clarified that before I read this. But archaic? No, it's not archaic. Anarchic. If that's anarchic, I'm so sorry. I'm messing that up. But anyways, some of them even got married there. People in the 40s will tell you this was old Portland. People in their 50s will tell you this was the beginning of the end. Either way, everyone in this story grew up with varying degrees of chemical dependency and success. Most successful of all, probably the scrappy donut shop, which went from being a late night spot for bar hoppers in need of a sweet treat to a multi-state chain that has become synonymous with the city it initially served. Voodoo Doughnut, which inexplicably turned 20 this month, now has locations in the state of Washington, state of Colorado, California, Texas, and Florida, plus multiple shops in Oregon. And a little side note, this is another reason why I felt this may be a story of interest to all the viewers, because there's a lot of viewers across the U.S., and some of you may be in Washington, Colorado, Texas, California, or Florida. I know certainly there's a number of you here in Portland, Oregon. So I'll continue the story. Their pink donut boxes are either iconic or a way to identify tourists, or maybe both. Voodoo Doughnut has gone so mainstream that the Bacon Maple Bar was voted greatest maple glazed donut in America in 2022 by America's Greatest Donuts. Even the late Anthony Bourdain, I know I'm trashing that. The gentleman from the Food Network visited the shop. Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain, that's his name. Portland's most loved or hated donut shop will celebrate 20 years on Tuesday, May 30th. So that day, Tuesday, that's coming this Tuesday. So at the original location in Old Town at 22 Southwest 3rd Avenue from noon to 4 p.m. with 20-cent sprinkle cakes and founders Trey Shannon and Cat Daddy. So those two people will be there. Anyways, that's just a little bit of a tidbit, a little story to some local character that helps make Portland weird. And if you've never been, they do make a basic good donut, but what gave them their name is the what they made. Like they would make donuts covered in all sorts of toppings, from Captain Crunch to different designs, a voodoo doll. They even make a big a Johnson. Let your mind run with that one as you choose. And all sorts of stuff. There's nothing's the same. And as a little another side note, because I service them on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I usually pick up a 2 yard size dumpster can full of their donut waste. And because I service them and I always make sure they have locks and check what their needs are, the bakers who are there early in the morning we've kind of generated a friendly social relationship, and they'd always offered up donuts, and I'm like, I've worked hard in losing all the weight that I've lost, so but if you don't mind me asking, I asked them if whatever amount of donuts you want to give me, I'd like to take enough back to the mechanics to keep my truck running, that'll afford me the ability to come here and service them. So they then walked out with two iconic Voodoo pink boxes, 2 boxes with 2 dozen of donuts in there that I had to keep secure in my truck for the rest of the day, and hopefully as fresh as possible. So I bungee cord them into my passenger seat and keep an eye on them throughout the day. And when I get done at the end of the day, before I go to my parking spot, I show up and I give them to my mechanics, thanking them for the work that they go unacknowledged for, and I have a deep appreciation for, to keep the truck that has 1,000 working parts to it running every day, that I have the security to come in and use and get my job done that much faster and efficiently. So rather than jumping from truck to truck, which kind of throws off one's feng shui for any commercial drivers out there that would know, using the same truck to do your route work every day is a big difference, rather than or as opposed to jumping in different trucks every day to do the same route. Really makes your job that much more challenging. So I very much appreciate what the mechanics do for me. So I let them know that, and I've kind of grown myself a little name for showing up with items that my customers have given me, and Voodoo Donuts being one of them. And another one is Wild Mike's Pizza, which is something you may have heard about. They're based here in Oregon also, and they usually give me a couple boxes of frozen pizzas. They got like 15 pizzas in them. I'm certainly not going to eat all those damn boys, but so I give those to the mechanics, and we have about 30 mechanics or so. So it helps feed a number of boys and makes them happy. So it's kind of cool. Anyways, so there's that introduction story. Now, a little recap of why I do my channel, because it just crossed my mind again. I read through a lot of the comments that people have made about my past videos, which I dearly and sincerely appreciate. 2 things. One, that you folks have taken the time to watch and listen to stuff that I have to say. I don't find what I have to say necessarily entertaining off the cuff, but when I think about it and relate it to our common backgrounds and to a lot of my friends, my existing friends, I feel that I have information that would help fill a lot of gaps, answer a lot of questions as to why things happened the way that they have, beyond what we all knew to be and took at first shot to be a trusting, believable, caring religion, when in fact it turned out that it was the complete opposite, where it actually is from my perspective, and you may commonly find through a lot of other people who have been there and walked the walk like I have, A as a gentleman by the name of James Byrne used to put it, a black-hearted bastard. Um, and then thus, as a result, it seriously impacted me as an individual. It didn't necessarily shape me into the core person, the core of my character, the core of my personality, the 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 way in which I think or conclude or reason with stuff. It just impacted me in that, as all cults do, that you may discover, cults turn out to be what you did not see them or understand them to be at the beginning once you begin your process involving yourself with them. And that is a very disappointing discovery as an individual. So, um, I decided that through the stories that Aaron and Mike and Mark and Claire and Janice and Mark and Karen De La Care and Chris Shelton, and all these people have their own unique stories to tell. Um, and a lot of it involves mostly stories revolving one particular aspect of their involvement in the Sea Organization or Scientology. And my what I come to realize is, not only when I listen and watch or read their stories, I always find myself wanting to reach through the screen and provide further information or further details to each one of these folks. And I came to realize, like, wow, I had, through my assigned responsibilities, my involvement um, in the Sea Organization, at Golden Era Productions, at the international headquarters of Scientology, I found that I had a little hand or little involvement with each of those stories in my own unique way. Whereas I don't think Mike or Mark or Matt and Amy and Claire and all these can necessarily or would have necessarily been in a position to have a dynamic involvement in all these little aspects. So what I mean by this as an example is, let's just use Mark as an example. Um, Mark pretty much worked in the audio visual aspect of the imp base, the divisions and departments, rising and falling and rising in supervisory, executive, or just worker bee positions throughout that whole thing. And he may have, but may not have as much as I have, um, went and got to know and see the staff members up in the translations unit, as an example, or up at the Star of California, the crew that cared for that building, or the grounds crew, or the estates crew. He may have had his involvement by them, those staff members, coming through the shoot crew department where they were being talent. But on a day-to-day basis, I went around and involved myself with pretty much every building and all the staff of the Imp base for years, for the better part of 15 years or whatever it was. I'll do the math later, but at least 10 to 12 years solid at the Imp base. I basically went in and out of all the buildings every day, all day long. That's all I did. Or I sat and watched the property for 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 24, 36, 72 hours a day straight, and watched what everybody did, or became knowledgeable of what everybody did, or inspected their personal belongings or birthing or their mail. And from all those actions of mine and my involvement, my dynamic involvement, I guess I'd like to call it, of the Imp base, I got to know everybody on a one-on-one, and see a lot of things that not a lot of staff got to see more than once, minimally. I got to see lots and lots and lots and lots, and behind the scenes, and even behind the scenes of all the how water was provided to the property, how the trees were trimmed, um, you know, interactions and relations with the local neighbors, either ones directly outside of the perimeter fence to local people in San Ysidro and Hemet out in and also out in the Indian reservation. So I feel the stories I have by those dynamic involvements may be of interest to this listening field here. And from these stories and my involvement, I can help provide a better understanding how certain things came into play that started out at the imp base level and worked their way all the way down to the public level, if that makes any sense. And how the wickedness of Scientology and the Sea Organization, through my eyes and my involvement, um, came about. Maybe not as a starting point, but maybe it already existed, but it certainly didn't exist anywhere near to what it is today. And that's what I'm helping. I'm hopeful to help our viewing public and listening public here better understand why and how and what my belief and perspective is to why excuse me for lack of other terms, but why does the church have such a hard on controlling people's lives, specifically at the imp base level, the imp management, the very entity in which all Scientologists draw their trust from? Why? Why is it so much effort put into basically controlling and ruining lives as their end result? Not supporting and bettering lives, but ultimately the result is controlling and ruining lives. So, um, my story I will eventually get to is how I got started and all that, and then how I woke up to um, my witness and confirmation to what I was witnessing, that this evil game that was at play, this pulling the curtain back, revealing the almighty Oz, and always getting always have an understanding. Yeah, there's someone behind that curtain, but I just had no reason to look. Then I became interested. Maybe I should start looking. Was fearful of looking, and then when I looked, wow, that was my light switch moment. What that I call, in which I was done. Where I was 1,000% certain that I was done, and I was going to move on from that place. So I can tell you that story. It's quite morbid. It's quite emotional for me. Um, I've only really told it from beginning to end once, as once the question that was asked at the time. I just went on this roll and told the story complete. And I was telling it in such detail that I just left the world or environment that I was in at the time I was telling it. And it happened to be on the studio set of the local um, ABC TV studio stage where they were filming me remotely down in Los Angeles. And I just began to tell my story. Next thing I look up, and the place was silent. There was people crying. I had no idea what impact I was having. I was just telling a story, but I really got deep into it, and that's the only real time that I've ever told it as deep as I did. So I know other people, friends of mine, know my story. I don't think my story's any worse than those you've already heard. Every individual's story that I've listened to and know about, um, as far as I'm concerned, is 100 times worse than my story. There's I don't compare, from my shoes. I don't place any more value on my story to someone else, but it is, each story is unique as it basically is a soul rattling event for that individual or those individuals you've heard these stories from. So I've got a story to tell. I will tell it to you. Um, a few tidbits of stories that I've, or stories, not stories like grab a coffee, grab a toasted bagel and some lox and kick back, set the heater on, get your comfy blanket, sit back and get ready to listen to an interesting story. My stories, um, you may find humorous. You may find that they may just be generally general information filling, time filling, time period filling stories. And I'm referring to some notes here. So sorry, my assistant's off today, so uh, I gave her the 3-day weekend, so I thought I'd give her some time off to herself. Otherwise, trying to keep my life together. And no, I don't have an assistant. I'm all by me. So, um, first of all, well, like I was saying, I'll get back to what I was telling you, so I don't repeat my historic thing of just jibber jabbing and dead air. I made notes of various uh, stories I'd like to tell here. So, believe it or not, I was a firefighter with Riverside County Fire as a Sea Org member in Scientology as a Sea Org member, and completely unheard of thing. But I'll give you the backstory of that. My desire to be a public servant and firefighter, when I made that decision as a 7-year-old little punk waiting to be picked up for, I think it was softball or soccer. Even before I even really knew what Scientology was all about, I knew I was involved with it. But even well before I even got to the base, how fascinating I find it that I ended up still being able to shake hands with my career choice in life that I made when I was 7. But now here I was committed to a billion-year contract. Um, as far as I'm concerned, for me as an individual, I had a beautiful 20-year long run uh, involvement with the fire department as a firefighter, as a state certified fire apparatus engineer. I was an engineer, pumped the engine, crew leader. Just from my perspective, I don't want to speak too much about it because I don't want to create any disrespect to not only my current firefighter buds, brothers and sisters, and their long profession that they had, because our history as a firefighter doesn't outdo one another. We all talk about incidents that we've been on. We share that, and I don't want to make mine sound greater than the others, but I certainly I got me some good fire, and I'd seen me some pretty damn good calls, and it's something I'm really proud of. So I thought I'd share that. Again, I can tell you about the neighbors around the property if the bays out at San Jacinto. There was this sheep herder. His name was Jimmy. He used to we used to utilize him, and we afforded him the what we knew as a South 40, which is the south side of the property, um, outside of the immediate perimeter fences, which is open wildland where the golf course, the 18-hole golf course did exist at one time until there was a flood in the 80s, flooded the golf course. A majority of our 525 acres out there went from being an 18-hole golf course to desert wildland. And Jimmy used to go out there. We used to have him out there, and his sheep would graze through and eat all the weeds and keep the vegetation mitigated. And then I eventually utilized him to work the North Mountain, the hillside on the north side of the property, all the way up to the Eagle booth, and keep the weeds abated up there and reduce the fire threat. So I got a little bit of stories to tell you about Jimmy, very fascinating stories. I can tell you about the local Indians, the softball team that we formed, and we used to play them in fast pitch softball. There was a little bit of an incident when I was on the rehabilitation project force and out there at Happy Valley, traveling back and forth by an old Bluebird bus that we had back in the mid to late 80s. And how that bus and its driver ended up hitting one morning on their travel into the base of the whole RPF, hit one of the Indian children who was on a three-wheeler crossing the road and plowed into the side of our bus, and what that did to our local relations with the Indians. I can tell you about the very early days of the international base when the buildings and the property itself, the buildings were still pink and white. The property was still basically us occupying an abandoned uh, hot springs, and it included all the motels, the hotbed, the hot spring mud baths, still up in the Qual building, what Del Sol building was, all the reference to all the buildings, the ranchos, the 200s, the 40 house, the 119 house, even what the ship area, which you know it today as the Star of California, what that building was like before we renovated into what it is. Um, MCI, Massacre Canyon, which is basically where all the crew eat. They've always eaten. It's been our basically, or it's been the location which we would gather for our own in-house events or have parties and so forth. Let's see. Oh, I can tell you this little story about Shugu. If anybody knows anything about Shugu, I've got a story to tell about the INCOM, the International Network of Computerized Organized Management. It's basically the church's in-house computer room, computer crew, computer network. I was I ran security on a mission that RTC fired in, and that's got a whole thing. I'll tell you the history of the blow drill, because I had a lot to do with the formation of it and the documentation of it to what everybody now knows to be the blow drill. I could tell you all the details about it. I can tell you about the mail lines, how those came about, the L. Ron Hubbard directives, that about it, the documents the crew signed, and all the various things that I found in the mail throughout the years that I personally inspected the mail, and what it is and what it is that we were looking for in the mail, what it is we did with what we deemed to be situations that we discovered on the incoming mail or even on outgoing mail. And then how we dealt with Christmas packages, crews sending packages out to their families that basically dwindled down to no packages being eventually sent out as the years went on. But initially, we used to get this rush of packages that we either had to preciously open and inspect and then rewrap because they would be received wrapped. We would complete wrapping packages that were on the outgoing mail. Anyway, there's a lot to be told about the mail. That's a very sensitive subject because that's very intrusive that I became something that I became aware of later as my employment at the base went on. I became more and more slowly aware of the legalities, the rights slash the wrongs of our doings with the mail and the handlings with the mail. I can tell you about the uniforms from personal experience to not wearing them while we didn't wear them initially, to the development and the new standard set of all Sea Org members getting brand new uniforms, the security force being uniformed and being properly outfitted. I have stories to tell you about LRH vehicles, the L. Ron Hubbard vehicles that were kept on the property. When he passed on, all of his personal vehicles, including the very Bluebird bus that he has been come to know to have died in and resided in up till his final days. It was up at Creston. It itself came to the base, and I got to go in and out of it whenever I wanted. I looked at it and saw it every day for years, and talked to the guys that cared for it, talked to the guys that built it, and there's other vehicles from his Dodge Dart to his bulletproof van, and his bulletproof semi box truck, Kenworth box truck that was built for him. I can tell you about the L. Ron Hubbard laundry line and everything you've probably heard the little tidbits about. I can fill in what I was aware of on how L. Ron Hubbard's laundry was handled, the hand washing, the scents, removing scents from clothing, the L. Ron Hubbard directive about perfumes, and particularly what is it? How, um, what is it? Rose. Basically, there's a scent of rose that was at one time all money was coated in, and L. Ron Hubbard believed that that was an act by the psychs to stimulate something because the rose perfume was all money smelled like rose perfume. Anyways, it was just a datum that we understood to come from L. Ron Hubbard himself, so we believed it. And it was how rose perfume, um, basically, it was a psych-driven, backbone, hypnotic, some kind of bullshit. Uh, thing. Any imp-based staff member or seer member hearing that is going to go, "Yep, there was a lot to do about perfumes in the sewer for some frickin' reason." And then even has Shelley herself, Shelley Miscavige, herself kind of, we as base staff members found ourselves witnessing her going against that grain, and her being the highest base staff member. It kind of put us all in this little questionable state of mind, but enjoyable one in that, because she started introducing other products that we could use outside of the granny's old fashioned laundry soap that was produced for us in 55-gallon drums, mind you, and how isopropyl alcohol was used for cleaning, and the whole laundry line. I can tell you a whole lot about the laundry. So anyways, there's a little, in a nutshell, compared to the amount of stories I can tell, to give you a taste of what lays ahead in my videos. In terms of what I'm going to go over today, let me see how much time I've generated, because don't think I'm not listening or paying attention to the comments, because there was even a couple of comments in there, and it was only a couple out of the thousands, but I still pay attention to them, and I take them to heart and consider them. One gentleman in particular mentioned these hour-and-a-half long videos are hard to sit through. Well, my first answer is that, not to be a prick about it, but you know what? You can pause it and stop it and watch it again later. Some people, a majority of people, don't seem to care two bits about how long the video is. It's more about the content. I necessarily, because I do this off the cuff, and even though I made notes now, these notes are designed to help guide me to my current story, but not help me set a time frame on the story that I'm telling. So I may decide to, go over my involvement in the Cine Shroot Crew and the Cine uniforms and the history of the Cine uniforms, and that may be, I may only just talk about it for 15 minutes, and that'll be the end of the video, giving you guys the rest of your day back to you. Or I may end up talking about it for what I feel to be 6 hours, but turns out to be an hour and a half. So I'm just going to do the best I can. I got to take a sip of water here. It's a little dry, and I've been up all night. I haven't slept. Sorry. I don't intend to be rude with drinking in your face, so I'm sorry. Anyways, another little tidbit I wanted to tell was about music. Music is a very important aspect to my life. Because like I said, I had the chance to go around all the different divisions of the property. Like I'd go down and I could watch a shoot crew actually shoot a scene, watch the props guys make their props, place the props on the set, watch the makeup crew put makeup on, watch the costume gals make costumes, watch the set guys build sets and move them in, watch the camera guys and hang out with the camera crew and watch them work on the expensive cameras, or the gaffers, the lighting crew, the electricians of the sets. I could check out all their Mo Richardson equipment and all the light stands and everything. It was just, but music, I got to hang out in the L. Ron Hubbard music studio, and I guess this will be today's story. Excuse me. where at night, when I was the roving guard, I would go up in the L. Ron Hubbard Music Studio, what we call the music studio. It was specifically built, which I partook in building from a dirt lot to what it is today. But hanging out with you musicians and the mixers, specifically Fernando Gamboa and Charlie Rush, were two people who I came to know over the years, way back early in the 80s, but even more so in the late 80s, early 90s. I used to go up there while they were working late nights in there. And the music studio was a state of the art recording facility specifically set up to record all of Golden Era's and Scientology's audio visual products that had audio in it, whether it be a specific album or it was a soundtrack to a movie. The music for it would be produced in the music studio. It was also, the music studio was offered up to local outfits, local people like the Hemet Choir Club or the Hemet Band, the Hemet High School Band. They were invited one time to come out and do some recording themselves, because the music studio itself, a lot of money was spent on equipment and the quality of the studio that it was. The music studio itself, literally from the concrete pad up, all technologies available to society at the time, and particularly we being Scientology and the Sea Org, and thus the Imp base, were paid a lot of particular attention to detail of sound standards and defeating the vibrations of sound waves, because there was a major highway that traveled right through the property. Passing trucks and vehicles would send ground sound waves that would travel north and south through the property. We had quite a dense ground or terrain in which all the buildings were set on. On the north side, it was very rock laden. It was just basically dirt and rock. You couldn't dig a foot on the north side of the property without hitting major rocks. And I'm talking, you take your shovel, and we all had our share in digging trenches and digging holes. If you had a digging job to do on the north side of the property, you knew you had to bring a breaker bar and at least 2 or 3 shovels, because you'd be breaking handles. But if you dig it 6 inches down, you're going to hit a rock that could either be 2 inches in diameter, it could be 2 feet, or 2 yards in diameter. It just depended how big it went. And it was always a challenge. So on the north side, sound traveled through the ground pretty significantly because of that. And where the music studio was built, the concrete pads were built. Now, in a recording studio, every room is typically isolated by sound from one another. Each room, such as the mix room, would be built as though it's its own sound room. So if you're inside looking through the glass and we're screaming at the glass, looking out of the glass, the people on the other glass could not hear a drop of your sound whatsoever, and vice versa. There was the main recording studio where the artists or the people being recorded would stand at the microphones and speak into the microphones, or sing or whatever into the microphones, and that would be its own sound booth. It was significantly bigger, but then off to the side was also the drum room or the drum booth, which is where the drum players were, and it itself was its own. So each of these rooms had their own concrete pad, and in which they sat on top of a big pad. So just imagine a square. We'll just keep it simple for you can understand. Imagine a square 50 foot by 50 foot even, and divide that into 4. And one of those square rooms would be the recording studio. Another square room would be the drum room. The other one would be the main recording room where the artists re-record and so forth. Now, each of those would be another pad built on top of the main foundational pad, and those top pads would float. And when we pour those concretes, we put these big screws in them. That literally we had this huge it seemed like a 6 footer, but basically they were, I think they were like every 6 to 10 inches apart. No more, they couldn't be more than a foot, but they couldn't be too close, nor could they be too far away, because once the concrete was poured and set with these screws embedded in the concrete, you could go to each screw and turn it a quarter turn, go to the next one, turn a quarter turn, and eventually you would end up raising that concrete pad up off the floor. And those screws embedded in the concrete themselves um, stood upon these neoprene pads. So we would lay the initial foundation, let it cure, lay down neoprene. Neoprene is a rubberized foam pad. I think it was like 3/4 of an inch, because for all that concrete to sit on there, it couldn't be a 1/4 inch or half an inch. It had to be pretty thick. We would then set these huge screws. They were probably well, they had to be at least the thickness of the concrete, and I think the concrete was at least 6 to 8 inches thick. So maybe they were 8 to 10 inches long. They couldn't stick up obviously too tall above the top surface of the concrete, so they had to be laid just to be even at the top surface, but still be accessible. So and they had to slot them. They looked like big flathead screws in the concrete. And like I said, once the concrete was set, the next process was, which I was part of the crew that did this, was you go around and you raise them. And we had these measuring slides, measuring marks at the outer edges of the concrete pad, so you can see how high they would be lifted. So say when the concrete pad itself was originally poured, it would be poured to the marking of, say, 1 on that measuring tape embedded in the side of the concrete framing. And then as we screwed them up, you could see it raise from 1 going towards 2 and eventually to 2, whatever we deemed based off of the acoustical sound standards. And I think it was based off of, we would raise it, do sound testing during the height of the traffic days to see how much sound will be transmitted through those, until we can minimize to very little to no sound being heard through embedded microphones in the concrete, so we can eliminate the highway noise. It was quite a to-do thing. That just goes to show how intense it was. Every piece of wood from the concrete up to the roof, it was all wood. And there was a reason for that. Now, this wood itself was, and I just realized that I went down the path of the building of the music studio, which is a story in itself, getting off my original path of telling you about my passion that I built up for music. But anyways, I guess I'm highlighting this detail about how the place was built, because the result was a huge studio of high recording capabilities and high recording standards, to where you basically, once you walk through the doors, and every door entrance was at least, I think they were 10 to 14 inch thick doors. Any door leading in and out of the music studio was thick. It was a sound door. You're traveling through sound walls, and all the walls, it was very technically built for sound, being a sound studio. And then even inside, all the sound panels that were handmade by the sewing crews that we had, so on and so forth. So for those listening that may have been there or had been there or had ever been in the music studio, you certainly remember building that studio and the details. It's an incredible building. I will say that. So having said that about the quality of the building, an equal amount, if not more, an equal amount of quality, if not higher quality of equipment went into it. The recording equipment, the speakers, the cabling, the amplifiers, the type of tape, the type of drumsticks, you name it. It was all high end. There was no expense spared, that I could tell, on equipping the music studio. So one night in particular, Freddie, who was Fernando Gamboa, bless his heart, rest his soul. That sweet, sweet, sweet man, incredibly nice gentleman, married to just an equally fabulous woman. He was in there, and Charlie Rush was in there, and Charlie Rush used to be a drummer on the original L. Ron Hubbard's Apollo Stars. Charlie had a long musical history in the Organization, and up until the 2000s, he remained as so. And he and Fernando were known as the drummers, and they used to do duels on our staff events where they would both do solos. They do a mixed solo where they're both doing Freddie and Charlie solo together, and then they would have a drum off. It was so freaking cool. It was electric. It was incredible. It was so freaking cool to watch Fernando do his thing. Incredible. And then see Charlie to do his solo. And we loved them so equally both. One couldn't outdo the other. Freddie, in my eyes, would outdo Charlie. Charlie was the wild card. Fernando would almost sit there calmly and just go and just have a straight face, where Charlie would be the sweating, ripping his shirt off, throwing sticks up in the air and stuff. He was the animated drummer, and we loved them both. It was one of the sweet little treats to see Charlie and Fernando play their drums at an event. So, anyways, I used to hang out with them. Yeah, just me, Charlie, and Fernando in the music studio one night. Early on, when the studio itself had been completed, I'd say within the first month or so, and they were still getting all the bugs worked out and this is and that's, to where it was a dialed in fine production recording line, and that required hundreds and hours and hours, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of work by not only Fernando and Charlie, but to many bass audio visual staff. So all this to do, I told you about the music studio, comes down to this story I wanted to get to and tell you about was the speakers in there. The speakers were quite expensive. The speakers started out as high-end, high quality, the best speakers you can get, down to little transitional speakers that as a producer and mixer, you could sit there and say, you could take an LRH recording or take a sound, a song that the musicians themselves made, play it back in its different formats, and it sounds good from those high quality speakers down to these little cheap speakers. And they would tweak stuff to make sure it sounded good through all those different levels of our potential public listening on. So to whatever format and equipment our people who bought L. Ron Hubbard lectures or Scientology albums, whatever they played it on, we wanted to make sure it sounded good on all types of speakers. So, and all this was set up in the recording room, the studio recording room, and on this huge ass mix board, which I understood at the time there was only 3 of at the time, and we had one of the 3 in the world. So Charlie and Fernando were kids at heart, and we loved messing with each other. They would F with me, I would F with them. I'd sneak up on them. Sometimes I'd shut the power out because it'd be completely dark in there and scare the crap out of them. But anyways, Charlie and Fernando would always give me treats. So one night I went up there. They said, "Hey, Jackson, check this out." So I'll never forget this little image, and this is the thing that really stuck with me. Is I look over and I see Fernando opening up the CD player, which at the time was new, and it was like, wow, that's a pretty cool thing. Not, there weren't many CDs on the market, and they certainly weren't commercialized as they are today. And so the CD player opens up, and he slips in this CD disc, which again to me was really new. And he hits some button on the keyboard, and I just hear dead silence. And again, in these rooms, because of their sound quality, their engineer sound quality, even the noise in your head didn't echo off of anything. It was pretty dead sounding in there. So they push a button on the thing, and next thing you know, through the speakers comes the thundering Michael Jackson's album Thriller, and it was and it was just incredible. These speakers, I believe, cost 50 to 70 or $100,000 a piece. So there was a high end, which is the high end of the audio spectrum, and then there was a low end, the Beats and all that. So what they proceeded to do was they break down the various recorded aspects of the song Thriller. Now, looking back at this, I think what they stopped doing playing was a CD, and they played, which was a 2-inch tape machine, which is a 2-inch, looked like a cassette tape, but it was made by TDK, and it was 2 inches in height, and it was played on this thing. And what it had was the ability to record 24 different tracked music, instruments. So you could have drums, the trumpets, a whistle, a voice. There's 3 or 4, and the sound, the voice recordings, the Foley sounds, which are in the musical movie industry, those are sound clips of footsteps, doors closing, keys rattling, whatever. They would add character to the whatever you're watching. But on this 2H tape was the Michael Jackson recording of Thriller, and they could sit there and turn knobs on the mix board and shut everything off and just hear Michael Jackson's voice singing. Like they would let the whole song play. You can hear it all at a thing, and they would start eliminating each one of those tracks to that song that made up the Thriller song. So you could sit there and you could just hear the drum beat. They could eliminate everything just down to the drums, and it just sounded weird in that it didn't sound like Thriller because it missed all the other aspects. So Michael Jackson singing to the keyboards and yada yada yadas, and all I heard was the drum. And then they would shut the drums off and hear Michael Jackson sing, and shut him off and hear the keyboardist. It was just so incredible. It's like, wow, it just wowed the hell out of me about the musical world. And somewhere along the line also, Fernando pulled out the L. Ron Hubbard musical advices. And these, again, were policies basically and directives that L. Ron Hubbard wrote outside of the typical green on white and red on white policies that the rest of Scientology world knew to be gospel in the Scientology world. L. Ron Hubbard advices were the int-based gospel. So they kind of superseded green and white policies. Even if you found an LRH advice and green and white policy conflicting, you would pay heed to the LRH advice over the policy, and only applied at the int-base. So saw the advices on music, and I was a bit impressed by what L. Ron Hubbard had to say about music. And he, in this one, had compared the longevity, what stands out in music, what has a life and what doesn't. And typically songs that their composure, or what made up the song, the composition of the music, if it was made by actual instruments and artists that played those instruments, those songs stood a lot longer longevity and being kicked along to all generations, a lot more so than electronically driven composed music. And I guess simply in today's world, if you compared it to R&B, and I'm not digging on R&B, but I think any human being can tell you a good old Led Zeppelin or Queen song is going to stand up against time a lot better than today's rap. And simply because of what the human by design prefers is actual musical instruments. And I was fascinated by that. So I really, over the course of time, drew a lot of interest in music, how it was composed, instruments, took great respect towards those that made it. I got to meet a lot of Scientology artists that came through there, known or not known nonetheless, from Jeff Pomerantz's crazy voice. Welcome to New Year's event 2000. That crazy. That was like a drug to that guy. And let's see, who did I get to meet? Sylvester Stallone's brother. God, why is it slipping my tongue right now? Uh, See, this is called dead air. It seems Frankenstein. God, I got to bring up my music library. Let's see. I'm gonna get to it here because I think it's worth it. So, you're probably sitting here listening to this, going, "Yeah, I know what you're talking about." Uh, Edgar Winter. Edgar Winter. I grew this little relationship with Edgar and his wife because at the time Edgar was there, um, I was on watch quite often when he would travel from the north side of the property to the south side of the property, and he was there before the underground tunnel was put in, so you could travel without have travel to the north side and south side and vice versa without having to cross the highway, a busy highway, and trying to dodge high speed traffic. So, plus Edgar, who is an albino, and he had vision troubles or challenged with the bright sun, which was a constant issue out there. I used to get out of my booth and go across the street and hold his hand and escort him across the street physically, and then vice versa. And then I got to know him through that little interaction and chit chat. He would stop and hang out in the booth and tell me stories about his musical background and who he used to hang out with. I was just a young and dumb kid, and I was freaking in awe. But also, I got to know Edgar. He was just a dude to me, and he used to call me Jackson and say, "Hey, what's up, Jackson?" And he was just like cool, this really silky white bleach hair, and he was just a cool cat, man, just a cool cat. And his wife was really cool. I forget her name. I apologize right now, but anyways, they used to come by and stop by the booth and hang out. Um, and then one day, at the time, I was getting married to my first wife, really just trying to get laid because that's the way it worked in the Sea Org, unfortunately. And I don't mean any disrespect to that, the first woman in my life, but that was why people got married. I He found out I was getting married, and then one day, to my surprise, he and his wife showed up to the booth and they gave me a wedding gift, and it was a set of towels, and one of which I still have with me today, just for that nostalgic save, just in remembrance. Of that precious moment in my life. It was really cool. I got to know Edgar Winter. So, anyway, so having learned that stuff from Freddie and the musical advices, and I was really young. I already liked music, but I had a whole new level of respect and understanding of music. So I had gained a lot more passion of listening to what I was listening to and appreciating artists and all that they do and go through to produce the music that you and I grew up with or listened to and find entertaining. And that leads me into one of the ideas that I had to begin my videos with a little bit of a, because I can't play music on here and it's a trademark, you know, whatever rigmarole. They think that if I were to play a soundbite on here, they being YouTube or the mighty gods to be, or maybe even the artists themselves, that I'm kind of ripping them off their efforts and not respecting their value of having made that record and for you to listen to. So I wish I could play the song, but I thought to do a little bit of a fun thing is I'm gonna attempt to, because I listen to music quite a bit while I'm driving. My windshield and I, or the interior of my car, have created a bond that I believe they are a very entertained listening audience of mine, and I am the best singer in the world. I think we all do that. So I like singing in the car. I think I'm a good singer, and I know right off the bat that I know I'm not, but nonetheless, in my head, in my ears, I am. So I was thinking I'm going to start introducing uh, lyrics from a song. I will sing. I don't care what you think. I'm going to sing like I think how I know I can sing. And then I'll just sing a bit of a line out of a song to the best of my ability and then see if you guys can figure out what song it is that I'm singing. Now, on top of this, I have a pretty special friend in my life now that I wanted to and they have a particular liking to a band that I grew up on at the Ant Base, and I think we both did. And I'm gonna see if they can figure out. It's gonna be our little game. You guys are gonna sit here and watch this video, but this little part is gonna be meant for this person, and they will totally. It'll mean the world to me that they even took the time to listen to it and see how long it takes them to get back to me and go, I know what song that is. I know what song that is. So it's a little bit of a fun. So it's doing the same thing with you folks, you guys listening. I'm going to pick a song, randomly a song. It'll be a popular song. It won't be a song. It'll be a very commonly heard top 40 song, either from the 80s, 90s, mostly the 70s, 80s, or 90s. Or even if it's the 90s or 2000, it'll certainly be one that everybody's familiar with. And so this one in particular, I was listening to recently. I'm not going to tell you the artist name. It's the whole idea. You have to guess who the artist is. You get extra kudos if you know who the artist of the band is singing the song. And even more entertainingly, if you can figure out what album it's on and begin and end the song. I think it's kind of funny to be able to do something like this, because we all commonly believe we hear what one person hears the lyrics to be in a song. Another person with the very same song will hear the lyrics differently. So hopefully I can pick a line in which it helps sort that kind of stuff out. Like, it's like George Michael and Elton John, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. Some people may interpret lyrics to be differently, and you've always sung it one way or the other. And so if I sing the lyrics out of one song that clarifies exactly what the lyrics are, and you've always thought it to be one thing, I want to hear that kind of stuff too. Or if you guys want to give ideas of a song to play with, then I'm more than happy to entertain that idea. I'm going to look up the lyrics to the song. A little bit of homework I forgot to do. Sorry, so I'm going to do it here during the show, but I'm going to make it quick. And just to give a little taste of it, and then I'm going to end off with my typical standard joke or trivia or life interest thing. Let's see. Whoops. Okay. I'm wasting your time. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. Maybe you can tell by my keystrokes here who I'm typing and the name of the song by the keystrokes. Can you hear that? Okay. I'm hopeful to make it worth your waiting, because by spending this time looking up the lyrics. All right, so I'm sorry, I just was trying to fill in dead air time there. So whatever I just said, scratch, back 5 seconds, edit, delete. Okay, so I'm gonna read as much as I feel I need to start and stop. So, oh wow, some of the words in here that I didn't even myself realize that's what they were. So hey, I'm sorting stuff out for myself. So, all right. Oh God. Now I'm feeling embarrassed, and I was so cocky about this idea that I could easily do this without concern, but now I'm like getting stage fright. So here we go. Oh my gosh. Even right up to here we go. How can I do this? All right. All right, so I'm going to just put myself in my car. I'm driving down the road. I'm singing. Okay. Okay, so here we go. So Fab Five Freddy told me everybody's fly. DJ's a spinning. I said, my. Flash is fast. Flash is cool. Francois Chapa. Flash ain't no dude. And you don't stop. And it's over to you. Now, I picked an easy one. Tell me who the band is, the name of the song, and who's singing it. And I'll give kudos out to you from the in the next video. And once we get to live and chit chat, we could probably make more fun out of this. But I just thought that would be pretty cool. You should be able to. I should have done a good enough job to give you some great ideas of who the hell that was, because I think it's just cool. It's such a great song to listen to. So, all right, So here we go. That's it on my video for the day, and I am going to end off with a joke or a little tidbit. So here's something. I'm going to kick in a couple of Chuck Norris's because I just thought it was cool. All these Chuck Norris has just become this icon without him even doing it. Just his portrayed badass on film, yet he's such a gentle soul at heart. But through his acting and his career and who we've come to know him as is the Ranger, has created this. It's okay. So this one I'm going to remember off the cuff. These others I have, but Chuck Norris taught his dog to pick up his own crap because Chuck Norris doesn't take shit from no one. I thought that was hilarious. All right. Let's see. Chuck Norris doesn't shower. He only takes blood baths. Let's see. Chuck Norris once ordered a steak in a restaurant. The steak did what it was told. I just think that was funny. Okay, and then here's a little tidbit I found on zip codes. And all right, so did you know each digit has its own purpose in a zip code? Everyone has memorized exactly 2 zip codes, 90210 and whatever their own zip code is. Isn't that the truth? We can thank a certain TV show set in Beverly Hills for that. Aside from that, general knowledge of these 5-digit figures is pretty limited. We put them at the end of addresses, and then our mail magically gets delivered to the right location. But through some crafty methods of detection, we discovered one of the most highly kept secrets all mail carriers know: what zip codes really are and how they work. Okay, so it's not really a secret, but now you have something to talk to your mailman about. Speaking of zip codes, see how many... Okay, so that just is a link to how many zip codes there are. Why do we use zip codes? The entire practice of using zip codes is a relatively new system that was put in place on July 1st, 1963. Before that, starting in 1943, the U.S. Postal Service used a series of postal zones for large cities only. If you were writing an address, that number would go after the city and before the state. And mail carriers used it to sort mail more efficiently. What does each number in a zip code mean? In 1944, a postal worker named Robert Moon submitted an idea for a new postal zone system that would cover the whole country. The first number in the zip code would stand for a group of states, starting at 0 on the East Coast and ending at 9 on the West Coast. And the second and third numbers would specify to which sectional center facility, the place where mail gets processed and distributed, the mail should go in that area. The U.S. Postal Service eventually adopted this plan with the addition of 2 numbers at the end to indicate the proper post office or postal zone, and thus the Zone Improvement Plan Code, or zip code, was born. So if you ever wondered what zip code itself means, ZIP, Z, zone, I, improvement, P, plan, code, code. So zip code means Zone Improvement Plan Code. a concept brought about by a postal worker named Robert Moon, submitted back in 1944. And that, my friends, is how the zip codes came about and why they're zip codes and what a zip code means. And if you didn't know that, that's information that you now yourself, at your very young age, can now live a better, happier, fulfilled life with and pass it on to your offspring, your friends or family, or whomever. Maybe create a pen pal with somebody in a zip code down in South America and let them in on how zip codes came about. So actually, it's a good question. I wonder if there's a zip code in South America. Anyways, there you have it. That's today's video. Let me see how far I'm in. It says I'm 1 hour and 15 minutes. I think that's enough time. I'm sorry to my special little friend here. I didn't get to the soundtrack, the soundbite lyrics from the song. But you know that I'm thinking about you and happily thinking about you. So I will do the best I can to remember it for the next. All right. Anyways, signing off on this beautiful Sunday, May 28th at now 4:22 in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Located here in Portland, Oregon / Happy Valley. And that's its own little story. How I ended up living near Happy Valley, which is the name of a property that we sub-owned, Happy Valley out of San Jacinto. That's a whole story in itself. But coming from Happy Valley / Portland, Oregon, I bid you farewell and enjoy your 3-day weekend. I have to be at work in the morning, and so I'll be enjoying working on Memorial Day weekend. All right. I love you all, whether you believe it or not. I will see ya. Bye. End recording. Come on, Jackson.